Hello, this is Vendalin, and in today's video, I'll be talking about Soulcalibur 6 and the critical edge attacks. What I will be doing is ranking the critical edge attacks based on personal preference and also other factors such as how good they look, as well as shot choice and the cinematography involved. In addition, I will only be ranking the critical edges of the base game characters. However, in the future, I will upload a video with every character's critical edges. This of course means that I will be including the DLC characters, all of them once they've been released. There are 20 critical edges. Even though there are 21 base game characters, 2 of the characters share the same critical edge attack. So let's begin. In 20th is Yoshimitsu. Yoshimitsu's critical edge is true to the character, however, to me it's underwhelming. His critical edge is unique in the respect that he takes the soul of his opponent out of the opponent's body and then splits it into 3 with his sword. The critical edge overall is entertaining. The moves and attacks that Yoshimitsu executes in the critical edge isn't that impressive to me, even though it is quite reflective of his character and it is an interesting critical edge. It is my least favourite. In 19th place is Mitsurugi.
Time to end you! Depart this life! The end.
His critical edge doesn't consist of much either. I do like the beginning, where there is a close-up of Mitsurugi and then he seems to be powering up his sword as it seems to begin to emit a fiery red glow, or essentially become a sword drenched in flames. I do like the way that this critical edge is filmed and the shots used. Overall, I do like the motions that Mitsurugi performs with his sword, along with the fluidity of the attacks and the cinematography and execution as a whole. For example, another aspect I do like is when, in the same shot, Mitsurugi is performing his downward swat to the right, and then the camera turns so that you can see Mitsurugi and the opponent, and then of course he vigorously performs a downwards attack that's aimed at the ground in the same shot. I've grown to like this critical edge more and more, however I don't think it's one of the best critical edges. Next is Cervantes.
Want to see hell? Souls will burn! Sink down with your fear!
He is, for me, in 18th place because something that does seem to be true to his character, while it is also shown in his attacks, and is also because of the fact that he's a pirate, seems to be his no-nonsense approach, and this is shown at the start of his critical edge. He performs 2 attacks, one with his swords, the next is a kick. After that he decides to use the gun built into one of his swords and fires it twice at the opponent. After sending the opponent flying up into the air with a slash from one of his swords, he can then perform one of his most famous attacks. Of course, the dialogue is also appropriate for the character. Even so, I still don't find his critical edge as entertaining as some of the other characters in the game. As a result, it doesn't appeal to me as much. The following character was originally going to be 12th. However, I changed my mind after finding that the critical edge attack wasn't that exciting and it didn't actually consist of much. The character I'm speaking about is Sophie.
Horrifying? Pardon me.
I do like the fast pace of this critical edge and the swiftness with which it is executed. In addition, I do like the shot type used at the beginning of the critical edge. The choice of a high angle shot almost seems to imply that the electrification of her sword has came from the gods. Essentially, the critical edge is short and sweet, yet it just isn't one of my favourites. Now we have Talim.
I dedicate this to the wind. Raise up the sky. Raise my dance. Blow away corruption. How did my dance look?
I don't have much to say about her critical edge. Like the others, it is true to her character, and again, it is really a good critical edge. Overall, it's one of the more elegant critical edges that appears to be almost more visually appealing than stylistic compared to some. Even so, yet again, it isn't one of my favourites. Even though I'm not exactly a fan of Voldo, he is still 15th in this list. While I also do find his attacks quite annoying, and when you are facing him, he can be quite an annoying opponent to face, his attack is very true to his character. Also, what I do like is that at the end, he's facing with his back turned to the opponent, as always, and then he seems to perform a bow as they fall to the ground, which I'd say is quite Voldo-esque. Even though it doesn't consist of much, one of my favourite parts of his critical edge is when he is in the air, and then he performs a powerful slash. And that is simply my opinion of Voldo's critical edge. Sung Mina is 14th.
You're gonna pay now! I've no plans to! Yes! Can you stand?
Quite entertaining, unique, and appealing to watch. And that's all I have to say there. Right above Sung Mina is Killick.
I strike. Now reserve. You'll live.
Even though his critical edge attack may not be in the realms of variety, I do like the series of essentially prods that Killick performs with his staff before performing a powerful prod that sends the opponent flying. I also quite like the sound effects that accompany his attacks, with the addition of the sound effect that you can hear during the aftermath of the last prod that he performs on the opponent.
Now reserve. You'll live.
In 12th place, we have Raphael.
Try to have some dignity. Still want more?
Who is usually one of my favourite characters to play as in the Soulcalibur series of games, simply because of his fighting style. I almost wish that Raphael's critical edge consisted of his iconic special move, where he executes a series of lightning-fast jabs with his sword. Despite the disappointing fact that this special move is not present in his critical edge, his critical edge as a whole is still satisfying. The visuals that accompany Raphael's attacks only add to the critical edge, and its fantastical display. What I additionally like is that at the start of the critical edge is when Raphael has the sword hilt close to his face. What I like about this is that the sword actually seems to glint towards the edge of the sword itself. All the while, during his critical edge, Raphael shows off his elegance as he elegantly swings his sword, even when he isn't attacking. Rather impressive, yet still disappointing critical edge. Taking the 11th spot will be one of the new characters in the form of Aswell.
Can you stand the test? Accept this from me! My love! You passed.
Aswell's critical edge is quite a bright and vibrant attack and series of moves. One of the reasons that it's so appealing to me is the fact that it's colourful. I find this critical edge quite visually impressive, and another critical edge that is quite unique. I always enjoy seeing the shot of Aswell centre bottom, the opponent falling before the many swords essentially impale the opponent. I do quite like this critical edge, and I would say it's one of my favourites. And now we come to the top 10. To start it off, we have Nightmare / Inferno.
Soulage! Be unleashed! Taste the sword of despair! Silence!
I do enjoy seeing Nightmare do the critical edge more because of the dialogue that he has, whereas Inferno doesn't exactly have any dialogue. Nightmare's dialogue is a factor that adds to the dramatic nature of his critical edge when comparing it with Inferno. I would argue that this critical edge is more akin to Nightmare's character, in part due to the presence of the horse that is created by Soulage itself. It's not necessarily one of my favourites, but I do enjoy watching it and I have grown to like it more and more. I will just add that another difference between Nightmare's critical edge and Inferno's critical edge is that you can more easily hear the horse neigh and it appears to be louder than in Inferno's critical edge. I'm still not entirely certain actually that it is a horse neighing in Inferno's critical edge. It might just be one of the sounds that Inferno makes, but even so, Inferno's critical edge is quieter apart from the sounds that Inferno makes, whereas with Nightmare you can hear him because of his dialogue and the emphasis that he puts into it. Siegfried is 9th.
Let's do this! Taste the power of my sword! Haven't had enough?
I did find it quite difficult to rank Siegfried and Nightmare. I was debating whether to put Siegfried above Nightmare or Nightmare above Siegfried. Either way, I had to come to a decision and I decided to put them next to each other anyway. It was just, who should I put above the other? With Siegfried's critical edge, I do quite like how it is filmed. The cinematography and the visuals used on the sword make this another visually appealing and colourful, as well as vibrant, critical edge. Guare is my next choice in 8th.
Watch over me, Mother! You can't stop me! Do you give up?
I like how she starts by adopting a kneeling stance with a discharge of blue energy, and I like how this shot is filmed as well. An impressive display of her skills with the sword and fencing skill. In summary, a good display of moves and attacks displayed by Guare. It may not be as visually impressive or dramatic, but it is still a likeable critical edge attack, in my opinion. In the respectable position of 7th place is Astaroth.
Shut up! Stop making that noise! Still moaning?
I do believe that originally I was planning to put Astaroth's critical edge in the bottom 10. However, I feel it is a skillful display by Astaroth. The appropriate cinematography has been used, which suits Astaroth and the attacks he displays. All the more surprising is how Astaroth, after slamming his axe into the back of the opponent, he then swings them up and manages to achieve quite a high leap for Astaroth, with the addition of a roundhouse spin while the opponent has the axe still in their back. Finally, he slams them into the ground. It is perhaps a critical edge where it would be difficult to see or imagine a large brute like Astaroth performing a swirling roundhouse in the air with his axe and managing to leap so high off the ground before he does that, which makes the critical edge all the more enjoyable to watch. It's always a joy to hear Astaroth's angry dialogue, which can also make him a funny character in some respects as well.
Stop making that noise! Still moaning?
We've almost reached the top 5. However, before we get there is one more character, and that character is Ivy.
I'll make you submit! Enjoy your treat! Give it up already.
The critical edge itself represents her feminine style and movements. The critical edge rightly displays her no-nonsense and dominating approach. The last attack especially creates the impression that she's in control and she is not to be underestimated, for example. The refined femininity is an integral part of her character, and this is reflected in her critical edge. She is not to be trifled with, and her sexual representation as a character is amplified in this critical edge as well. And now we're down to the top 5. Tacky is my 5th choice.
This is as far as you go. Yeah! I'll decimate you. Now stay down.
There's a lot to love about this critical edge, and a shining aspect of it for me is the cinematography. The part where the camera moves to focus on the blade behind her back creates a more cinematic feel. The visuals, yet again, like many of the critical edges for me, are appealing to the eye, and so this pleases me as well. And now we come to 4th. Salama assumes that position.
I've waited for this! My abyss shall take you! Satisfied now?
A unique critical edge and an attack by Salama I always enjoy watching and love to see executed. And now we have approached 3rd place and another new character, and that is Guare.
You will be erased! It ends here! Chevalier! Curse your weakness.
His critical edge is swift, and I do like the attacks he performs as well. One highlight is when he throws his weapon, then impales itself in the opponent, it stops them from flying back any further, and then takes his swords apart and quickly attacks the opponent with both of them. It is a breathtaking display of his skills and a pleasure to watch. Overall, it's just a cool critical edge. The first guest character has taken 2nd place for me, and it is Geralt.
Let's dance. Stand up. Now taste my steel! Not your lucky day.
It's definitely my 2nd favourite critical edge. The way it starts off is fast and riveting. I just love everything about this critical edge. It certainly is a sight to behold. That is also the case for 1st place, and of course that character is Maxie.
The surf's gonna get rough! I'm gonna ride away! Go get some rest.
One of my favourite characters in the series, partially due to his fighting style, which I love. He performs a series of great attacks with his nunchucks at first, and everything about Maxie, in terms of his combat at least, is fast. I also like the dialogue that comes at the end once he's finished the critical edge.
Go get some rest.
I just love the cinematography, the attacks he performs, the speed, the dialogue, the visuals, the colours, everything about it. It's my favourite critical edge that belongs to a great character, in my opinion. Simply mesmerising.
The surf's gonna get rough! I'm gonna ride away! Go get some rest.
And that is how I ranked each critical edge in this game.